Hello, welcome to the Bonsai Stuff podcast. As always, it's me, Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and I love you all dearly. I tell you what, I just got back from a little walk around the street, and I never cease to be amazed by trees and how much I love them, seriously. Walk past this grand magic eucalypt that I walk past almost every single day, and I just stop looking up at it going, you know, you are just incredible. And I think overall trees and humans, we've got this beautiful symbiotic relationship where they produce oxygen for us and we produce carbon dioxide for them. It's like the perfect relationship where we work together and we survive together. It's something that can't be underestimated, but it's grand. Anyway, with the podcast this week, I talked a couple of weeks ago about working in a mode where, you know, I'm doing cutback mode, or I'm doing needle plucking, or I'm doing wiring or shaping, or whatever it is, whatever mode that you're in, just to try and help fragment or break it apart from a bigger amount of work, a bigger picture, down to that smaller area. And I wanted to extend that a little bit further with this podcast by talking about the level of work that we do at the micro and the macro level and how they work for us with our bonsai. So one's at the coal face, and the other is sitting back and having a cup of tea, looking at the tree and planning at that macro level. So I want to dig a little bit deeper into that at this point in the year, which is just at the start of winter, when a lot of planning starts to happen. You get to look at your deciduous, you get to see them with their structure, and you may not be able to do terribly, or you may not be doing terribly much with the trees at this point, but that macro level is super important. And the other thing I want to talk about in the podcast today is bonsai confidence versus bonsai overconfidence, and sort of maybe working out where you sit in the scheme of things and how you can improve your confidence level to improve the skill quality that you have when you work with your trees to get a stronger, better, more beautiful bonsai at the end of it. So hopefully it's of interest to you. I'm sure it will be. Anyway, stick around. Let's get into it. Now, you know that I love a plan. I think if you go through every single podcast since day one, or near enough, you'll hear me say the word plan, because I think you cannot succeed in anything, but especially in bonsai, over a long period of time unless you have a plan. And the macro level, I'm going to talk about macro and micro a lot. So, but the macro planning, that high level view, that sit back and have a beer and just look at the tree. Okay, what needs to happen with this tree to become the best bonsai in the world? What do I need to put in place, or what needs to change, or what needs to grow, what needs to be cut, what needs to be shaped, what needs to anything. All that stuff at the macro level really makes such a big difference, because it gives you focus, it gives you direction. It tells you at some point or another what you need to do and how you're going. It builds a pathway for you to get somewhere. And it might be that you look at something and go, okay, well, I want this part of the flow of the tree to grow a bit further. Okay, so how do I get that to grow a bit further? Right, so when I'm doing pruning, I'm going to let that grow, then I'm going to cut. So it gives you a sequence, I suppose, a series of things that need to happen, things that you can be in control of, or that you may help with, or you may allow to happen, that allows you to get to that point where you can start to achieve the plan. So the micro level is when you're looking at branches at the very cold face, at the up close and personal point. That's where you start to make those decisions, and it's very different. I don't encourage you to sit back and do the planning and have a pair of scissors in your hand while you're looking at it going, yeah, well, that really needs to come back, snip, bang. It's okay, well, that's got to come back, this has got to happen. There's always a series of things that happen in order to get you to achieve the end goal, okay, to achieve your plan. So dealing with at the micro level, dealing with what's there right in front of you right now is very different to that longer term 5, 10, 20-year plan, whatever it is, that maybe 2-year plan that you've got in place for your tree to get to that level. And I find that you can sometimes get a bit distracted, daydream. You can get a bit lost. It can also be difficult to make decisions when you're thinking, well, I really want this. Let's talk about deciduous. Right, that you want the silhouette to grow out a little bit further. You want finer ramification on that tree, and you're looking at it going, okay, well, it needs to be this percentage, 20% bigger. Like the framework of the tree really needs to be another 20% bigger, which might equate to, I don't know, let's call it 5 centimeters wider on either side, something like that. But you want fine twiggy growth. Now, that's the macro level is, yeah, sure, I want it to fill out. But at the micro level, you're making pruning decisions, not sitting there going, okay, well, the plan is 5 centimeters longer, so I'm just going to leave these shoots really long and push out the internode length to get to that point. It's like, no, when I'm pruning, I'm coming back to the first pair of buds, the first node, I'm cutting back to there. So then next time it grows, it's going to be really fine, delicate growth back in closer. And it might be 2 or 3 years to achieve the silhouette that you want, but the micro application of the plan is very different from what you're seeing or what you're wanting at the macro. So having some kind of time plan on it or some kind of focal point to say, okay, well, I'm going to achieve this bigger issue, bigger plan, but it's going to take me, maybe 3 or 4 cycles of growing, can suddenly set some realistic plans in place for you and expectations when you're working with that tree. So I find it happens a lot where people are working saying, well, I want this bigger, so I'm going to cut it longer. But it's like, yeah, but you don't want that thicker, longer, coarser growth. You sort of maybe want it to be finer. So it's something that, when you're working up close and personal, it's like, okay, my focus, my mode is prune everything back to the first node, to the first set of buds, or first bud, or second bud, depending on the species you're dealing with, but coming back nice and close so you get that finer ramification, so it's going to build gradually into the space that you want. And I know this from experience, it is so easy at times to get distracted by the big picture, and you'll make compromises to rush the point and get there quicker than what you possibly should. So the macro gives you the plan to develop the best bonsai in the future, and the micro shows you what you have to cut or what you have to wire or what you have to remove, and it's a completely different mindset between the two. And I think that they're both absolutely essential, because one without the other, if you're forever planning what's going to happen, but you're never actually doing anything, then you'll never achieve it. And if you're working up close and personal and you're cutting without a plan to work to, then you're going to look at it and go, well, it's still not right. Well, why isn't it right? Because you don't have a plan for the future. Maybe it's about negative space. Maybe it's about opening up certain areas. But if you're constantly just pruning everything back to the first node without a plan on what to do, you'll never really achieve, because what you're doing is you're working towards something that you don't know what it is. You don't know what that goal is that you want to work with, and you get busy doing tasks on the trees, but you're doing it, but you don't know why you're doing it. You're doing it because you may have seen someone on social media, they're decandling. Okay, well, is that the right thing for you to do? Well, I don't know. People are decandling, so I'm going to decandle. But is that what's going to achieve your plan for the bonsai that's right in front of you? Oh, people are defoliating. Okay, is defoliation the right thing for the plan for the tree? I don't know. I don't have a plan. Well, if you don't know what you're trying to achieve, then you'll never achieve it. You'll never get there. Like, you might trip across it, or you might walk around and see beautiful bonsai and go, how's theirs different from mine? Like, how do they achieve that, but I don't? And that's the macro level. That's that sit back, put your feet up, get a piece of paper, draw a sketch, look at photos, try and find a target, not to mimic, but to something that you like. Okay, what's the difference between what's in front of you and what you're thinking and what you want to get to? And it's like, okay, so this is the difference. That this one's got a branch running in this direction and I don't. Okay, so how do you get an extension on a branch? Do you need to run a sacrifice? Is the trunk different? Is it whatever? But that whole planning at the macro level, but working at the micro level, when you do it together, when they're hand in hand, it works really well. It works and it's far more satisfying for you. And that's the reason, that's the big push from this podcast, is that when you can do the micro and the macro at the same time, in conjunction, hand in hand with each other, it's very satisfying. Knowing that somewhere in the future, 5 years in the future, you'll have hopefully, everything going to plan, you'll have a tree that is exactly what you want. But working at it right now, knowing that you're not there, knowing that the tree, when you do this work on the tree, it's not going to finish being that perfect tree, but it is going to be ready to take the next step to become the tree that you want. My God, that's when it all works, because that's when it's very satisfying. And you put it back on the bench and go, I've really got hope. I've really got a vision. I've really got the know-how to get to that point, know what I have to do. And it's not going to happen overnight. You don't want it to happen overnight. You want to build towards it, and knowing that when you get that tree in front of you next time, okay, all I have to do is this. Great. Do it. Put it back on the bench. All right, now it needs time. The tree needs to do what it's got to do and live up to its end of the bargain and start to develop, and hopefully what you've done pushes resources to certain areas or takes resources from certain areas. Maybe branches extend, maybe branches ramify, whatever it is. But having that micro work that at the coalface, and looking at the individual branch in front of you and saying, what do I need to do with this branch right now, will help you to achieve that macro vision, the bigger, the sit back, feet up planning mode for the tree. It's very satisfying, and it's very different from when you are just simply, okay, what do I do right now? That thought process of, just tell me what I have to do right now. Okay, well, you have to cut. Fine, I'll just cut. But no, you should know. You should want to know why you're cutting and what you're cutting towards, and what the vision is going to be. Having that vision doesn't mean that you may never achieve it. It may be something that is needs review time and time again to get there. But by having at least something as a target, the macro level vision, that sit back, this is the grand plan, this is what we're going to get to. Great. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having, being misguided or something like that. But at least you've got something. It's far better than having nothing. And I just really encourage you, when you do break down and start looking at that smaller up close area, that you really hone in on just that. Don't get distracted. Don't push too hard. And I actually read something when I was preparing for this podcast, where they were saying that the macro tells you what to build, the micro tells you how to pick up the first brick. So that I thought was really, really fitting. So rather than looking at the, you want an enormous building or a house or whatever it is, but it's all done one brick at a time. That I tell my kids that story forever. It's so good to want, the biggest building in the world, but you've got to start one brick at a time. And when you break it down to just simply doing one brick in the construction, it's achievable by everybody. We can all do it. Absolutely everyone. When you sit back and look at the Taj Mahal and you think, wow, there's no way I could build that. If could you put one brick into a wall, and if I taught you how to mortar it in, could you do that? Yeah, definitely could. Okay, we'll just do that 400 trillion times, and you've got the Taj Mahal. So it's same with our bonsai. It's the knowing what you want to create, and then it's going, okay, well, where do I make a cut? How do I make the cut? Should I let it grow a little bit longer? Does it need to be wide? Does it need to be left alone? What's my path to that success? And when you break it down and go, just cut that branch. Perfect. I can do that. Because once you cut that branch, this is what's going to happen. And when that happens, you'll do something else, and then something else will happen. And you start adding those something else's all together, and suddenly you've got the macro. You've got the plan for how to achieve and grow beautiful bonsai. So it's not unachievable. It's not left to the scarce few who bonsai whisperers. It's available to us all. But it's that breaking it down into what do I want and what am I looking at? What do I do right now? What's here right in front of me? So I think that mode that I talked about plus this macro micro hopefully sort of puts a nicer picture together for you. Okay, let's move on to the next topic for the podcast I want to talk about, which hopefully can help in many ways. Help your trees, help you, and help you enjoy bonsai a lot more. And I want to talk about bonsai confidence versus bonsai overconfidence. And this is a real thing. I see it quite a lot, especially with people as they're first getting into bonsai, and things like YouTube videos. They can really, really pump you up. They can really give you an insight to what's happening. But often, at times, you may not get the full story when you look at techniques, especially how things are done on YouTube like that. You may be a little bit misled and think that what you're looking at or what you're going to work with is exactly the same as what you're seeing in that other vision, other world. And it's often not. So confidence for me really should come from education, from experience, and from guidance, mentorship. It comes from maybe not always admitting maybe that you're not quite sure, that you don't always have the answers, and getting someone just to reassure you or build up that base of knowledge for you that comes over time, like doing the same thing year on year on year. All of a sudden you go, I know what to expect. I know what's going to happen. Seeing a tree that goes from being weak to strong, and how the response changes in that particular variety, that species, over time when things are done correctly, going, well, at the start, it was barely alive, but now this thing is exploding. It builds up your confidence knowing that the tree, having been through that whole range of, not quite well to extremely healthy, knowing what you've had to do along the way, when you do come across that same scenario again, suddenly it's not quite so daunting. It's like, okay, I've got the confidence in this because I know that if I do X, Y, Z, whatever it is, then the tree, everything being equal and the same as last time, I should get this sort of a response. Sometimes that overconfidence starts to build where you go, no, I've done that 4 or 5 times. I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm into it. I'm just going to do it. The trees may not respond because they're all unique. They're all individual. They all need individual assessment and care. And jumping in, pushing ahead, saying, no, this is exactly the way that it has to be done, and predicting what's going to happen before it's happened may lead to a situation that you get some setbacks because being honest, overconfidence in the realm of bonsai that we all work with and we all love may lead to irreversible damage. The ultimate price to pay is obviously, the tree doesn't make it through. Other things might be that, you're expecting buds to pop, so you cut branches off and then those buds don't come. It's like, well, now what do I do? I don't have that position anymore because the tree may not respond necessarily exactly the way that you expect, and it sometimes overconfidence can come in your abilities And that's where the education side of things and the practice and the repetition kick into it, and guidance. Or it may be overconfidence with how your bonsai, how the tree is going to respond to what you've done to it. And that happens to everyone, me included. Every single person listening to this will have done something to a tree, expected a certain result, and then gone, well, that didn't happen, did it? And that's common. But it's a matter of making sure that you've always got a plan B, that if you're definitely going to go down a path and definitely going to do something that, okay, well, if that doesn't work, I've got this. This is what I'll replace it with. This is the way that the plan changes for this particular tree if that doesn't happen. So I try not to put myself in the overconfident basket for a lot of things. I try to put myself into the realistic basket, going, well, this, from my experience, this is realistically what the outcome could be. And it might not be good. I work in percentages where I'll do something and go, well, if I do that, what's the chances of backbutting happening, or this growing that way, or that happening? Sometimes I look at it and go, well, based on my experience, based on my database I've got in my grey matter in my brain, what I've seen happen in the past is there's probably a 95% chance that's going to work, which sounds great, but there's still a 5% chance it's not going to. Other times it's like, wow, it's 50-50. Other times it's like, there's probably a 5% chance that'll work. Is it worth taking the risk to do something to that tree? Or is it better to think about a different pathway to achieve what I want to achieve? Maybe I'm stuck with it for a while. Maybe delaying may allow me to draw more resources to that area, and therefore I will achieve whatever it is I'm going to do. But it's that overconfidence when we're working with living matter that can really be detrimental. And because we're dealing with something, with a medium. Let's call the tree a medium. It's not. It's more than that. But we're dealing with a medium that may not necessarily show us immediately what we've done. So we get overconfidence in, let's say, pick a topic, repotting. Repotting's just around the corner, so we'll talk about repotting. Let's say you repot your tree and you go, yeah, great, that cedar, I could take it out of its pot, cut off 99% of its roots, and look at it, looks fantastic in this new pot, looks brilliant. So all my cedars I've got, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to repot exactly the same way. Okay, so when are you going to see the results, the impacts of what you've done there? It might be a month. So by then, that overconfidence, that overstepping the mark without the experience, without the education, without the guidance, really has taken you to a point that you cannot come back from. And sure, if you do it to one and you stop and you wait and you see the result and then go, yeah, okay, that didn't work. All right, so now I've got to change my whole plan on this. I've got to adjust the way I'm thinking about this, and I've got to set up for a macro plan, something in the future. Dealing with it right here and now, that overconfidence can really set you back a long way, and it can be absolutely devastating to your trees, to your bonsai as well. So it's hard, to know that you're being overconfident, or dare I say it, I don't really like the word arrogant, but that arrogance or lack of respect for what's in front of you can really make things go pear-shaped, and it might be that you're dealing with a certain species, let's say, I don't know, you're working with black pines or junipers or whatever it is, and you get a couple under your belt and you go, yep, fine, I know them backwards. I know everything about them. I've got it down pat. Well, then, suddenly something varies, the variety slightly changes, or, the tree's health may not be what you've been dealing with in the past. And then suddenly you just continue with that confidence, knowing, no, it's exactly the same. No, they're not. They're individuals. Every single bonsai that you're working with has got individual requirements, individual care, individual strength, and individual resource allocation. So that confidence that you've got, the overconfidence, really needs to be put in check a little bit, But on the other side of the coin, the lack of confidence can be just as bad. That fear of doing anything because you don't know what needs to get done can push the tree and yourself back a million miles. Looking at a tree in a pot saying, I'm not sure. I don't have the confidence to know where to cut this tree. I don't know what the response is going to be if I do this. You know what I'm going to do? Nothing. I'll just leave it alone. So that lack of confidence is just as bad because things can get worse, health can deteriorate, things get longer and longer and longer, and suddenly start getting away from anywhere near being able to become a bonsai because all the foliage is pushed too far away. So that lack of confidence is terrible, as well as it's just as bad as overconfidence. So that it's that middle of the road that I really encourage you to work within. Don't be overconfident, don't be underconfident. Just follow the Goldilocks approach. Just be just right. So I've worked with these trees before. I'm pretty sure this is what's going to happen. So then if I take these steps, do the health assessment of the tree, do all the stuff that we've talked about. Is there any other external factors? Has the tree got pest issues at the moment, which may indicate that the tree possibly isn't as strong as what the other varieties that you've been dealing with? If that's the case, do you need to take a backward step, fix that issue first, build the tree's strength up, and then get into whatever it is you're going to do? Because irreversible, a lot of decisions that we make when we're working with our trees, they're irreversible. You can't stick it back on. Once it's cut off, that's it. We can't undo our actions. And sometimes that little bit of caution, that little bit of hesitation, or seeking guidance, or building up your knowledge about something is far better, far easier. It's a shorter path to get to the end result than just jumping in there, head first, going, no, this is the way we're going to do it because I know everything about dealing with this tree. So you make decisions, you do things, suddenly it leads to a bit of failure. Then, once your confidence gets knocked, it's like, that's it. I don't know how many times I've heard it where, no, I'm never having that species. No, they died. One summer came around, they all died. Okay, well, it's, was it the repotting maybe? Maybe how they were repotted caused them to become weaker, and then suddenly, the warm day was the tipping point for the tree, but it wasn't the warm day that killed it. It was, what's happened before then. So it's always be an open book, always be a sponge, always take in as much information as you can, allocate it to your particular environment, to the tree that's in front of you at that time, and seek, go to your bonsai network, go to your bonsai buddies and say, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Has anyone had experience with it? I haven't. I've done something similar, but I'm just not sure whether this would be something that would be good, bad, or disastrous for this tree. It's I had someone come into the studio, the workshop, to do a workshop with me on a tree that they wanted to bend. And I've told this story before, but they held back water on the tree because they were confident that they'd seen someone online go, no, if you want to bend this particular variety, hold back water. All of a sudden the fibers become more flexible. You'll bend it, no worries. Held back water for weeks and killed the tree. So it's that overconfidence can really be an absolute kick in the guts for not only you but for your bonsai as well. And just sometimes drawing breath, sitting back, thinking about it, planning it, making sure that it's the right thing to do can make such a big difference. If you've ever wondered why I chose to call this podcast Bonsai Stuff, just maybe have a look back at some of the topics we've covered recently. It is really about anything and everything to do with bonsai. It's as I get a spark of an idea or something crosses my mind, it goes into a little journal that I've got, and I start building it like I build bonsai. And I have so many of these different little thoughts that the primary focus is to help and to assist every single person that chooses to listen to the podcast and listen to me, to make not only them happier and their bonsai journey better, but also make their trees better. Strong trees, healthy bonsai. It's something that you can't undervalue, to be honest, because when you've got strong trees, we can do so much with them. And the plans that you look at, and I know it sometimes can be frustrating thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in future, but it goes fast. And with healthy trees, you can get there slowly. You can get there quickly. By sometimes drawing breath and sitting back and having that plan in your back pocket, that macro level view of what you're doing, but then working on the skills to undertake the tasks that are needed at the micro level. That's the kicker. That's the big difference between good and great bonsai and good and great practitioners or custodians of these trees is the person that can not only come up with the vision of the tree, because I think a lot of the time we can sit back and we can see what a tree could become, or over time you can pick up that vision and go, oh, I really like it. I love this tree, and this one's got that sort of movement. It's very on the same path to that one, so I can see where it's going to get to. But the big difference is undertaking the education and building the skill set that comes with undertaking those tasks at the micro level. Little things like pruning, keeping your scissors sharp, keeping your scissors clean, keeping all your tools in perfect condition so they're able to do the job that they should, making sure that when you're wiring, it's effective wiring. It's not ugly. It's aesthetically pleasing. It's beautiful. It adds to the tree rather than detracting from it. It's highly effective. All those little things that can come together. Wound management. When you cut off a branch, are you going to seal the cut? What's the idea? When you've got gins on a tree, are you going to clean them? You're going to maintain them? You're going to extend their life by adding gin fluid to them, or all those little things that we do at the smaller level, they all add up. It's all that one brick at a time to build a magnificent bonsai. And hopefully this podcast is like that whole concept of one brick at a time for you, where you start to think about things slightly differently, or you start to engage differently with the tree that's in front of you, because that niggling little voice of Scott from Bonsai Matsu is chipping away at you, saying, no, just think big, work small. Have the great vision, but just look at that bud, that one little branch that's in front of you. What are you going to do with that right now? How are you going to use that to achieve what you want to achieve? Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. I've enjoyed putting it together. I love podcasts like this. So thank you very much for listening in. I hope you subscribers. Thanks again. Till next week. Happy bonsai.